We're Wimbledon finals at the same time right now as the Tour de France, of course, that is. Getting everybody here. We are on, this isn't technically the edge of Paris, but it kind of feels like it's the edge of Paris, or we should say the edge of Paris that most people visit. We're down here at the end of the little island that we'll tell you all about, and where our Statue of Liberty is. So we were going to see her last weekend for the 4th of July, but now it's closer to a better holiday coming up here on Wednesday. Good morning, Carol and Dawn and Martha. So great to see everybody. Giving everybody a minute to get here. And make sure you pin Kate's image up there, and we'll go ahead and get ready. Hi, Angela. Early on the early over here on the West Coast, sort of early, 8 a.m. Practically the middle of my day when you wake up at 3 a.m. We'll go ahead and jump in here. Of course, everybody knows who this lady is standing here. The end of the island, of course, it is the Statue of Liberty. She will talk about why and when she arrived here. But of course, it was created by Mr. Frederic Bartholdi in 1855. He went with a group of artists down to Egypt and Yemen, and he fell in love with the huge structural statues they had, and the pyramids, and the Sphinx, and it inspired him that he wanted to create something really large. So in 1869, he returned, and he returned back to Egypt, and with a proposal of creating a large statue to be at the entrance of the Suez Canal that was being built at the time. He was inspired by Delacroix's Liberty Leading the People, and he wanted to create a statue of a woman, very large, in a Grecian draped dress holding a torch. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? So this was going to be called Egypt Carrying the Light to Asia. The proposal was declined, and then the Franco-Prussian War began. And so the entire thing was kind of just fell to the wayside. So later on, he ended up meeting with some friends of his for dinner. And those friends, the subject came up again. Let some more people here in. The subject came up again when he was at dinner with Edward Laboule. And if you have watched the Nicolas Cage movie, National Treasure, the second one, Edward Laboule comes up. I watched it again last week just to see that part of it. And you'll kind of see one of those views when we get down here a little bit farther. But they were at dinner, and Edward Laboule was a lawyer, and he was the president of the Franco-American Union, and he had an idea to give something to America that was on the 100th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence in 1876. So at this dinner there in the summer of 1865, Bartholdi was in attendance because he had created a bust for Laboule. The idea came up because it was around the time of the death of Abraham Lincoln, when the newspaper in France, Le Fer de la Loire, wanted to give a gold medal to Mary Todd Lincoln. And the medal was going to be inscribed with that it was dedicated to the French democracy and to Lincoln, an honest man who abolished slavery, restored the Union, and saved the Republic, in that veiling of the Statue of Liberty. So this wasn't the statue that we know it of. It was the idea of the Statue of Liberty that Abraham upheld. So that was at this dinner that they were at, it came up again. So they thought, Bartoli was like, hey, I wanted to create this thing and give it to Egypt. And so he's like, well, why don't we have, maybe we could come up with this again. So they were all in agreement. They decided to try to raise a bunch of money, and then ended up, sorry, we keep letting people in here. Welcome, everybody. So the idea came up again. And so Bartholdi decided to talk to some other friends of his, including Eugène Viollet-le-Duc, who we know from all the amazing work that he did of oh good, we get to see this little side um, of the amazing work he did on the Notre Dame du Paris. Go see her from up here, and then we'll go back down into the island. We'll keep going along the island to the very end. So Bartoli, he also asked Gustave Eiffel, who took over after Viollet-le-Duc passed away. He died before anything was ever finished. He died after he was going to create the structure that was going to uphold her arm and into her head, and then he ended up dying. So another notable gentleman, Gustave Eiffel, jumped in and helped create and design the inside structure and the curtain, which was a massive pieces of copper that were then covering her skin that Eiffel was building this structure inside that had all of these different horizontal pieces and pylons that were standing inside of her. You could see a bunch of really cool images online of the inside of it. It's really interesting. And there she is up there. She is a tenth of the size of the one that is in New York. And she looks that way, but she didn't always look this direction, and we'll get to that. But when he started creating this, he decided he was going to go. Bartoli decided he was going to go off to New York to go see where this was going to be. The statue that he was going to create was going to be placed. It was called Liberty Lighting the World. The Statue of Liberty, the name itself was more of the American branding of her. But in the late 1860s, the format of these larger statues and this whole idea kind of was spreading through Europe. So it was very easy for them at that time to start to raise money and to have this statue created. And it was, quite the talk of Paris and even in New York. So in 1871, he went to New York. He visited to the Belle d'Eau Island, which was going to be the place for the Statue of Liberty. It is now, of course, named Liberty Island. A month later, he was sitting with the president at the time, Ulysses S. Grant, and he was on board with this, and the fundraising began right away. A man that had a copper factory named Pierre Eugène Sectin, he donated 64 tons of copper for the creation of the statue. And the statue was a lot of the inside of the structure of it was created at Gustave Eiffel's factory that he had that was near Parc Monceau on the Rue de Chalet, which is where you now could find, if you finagle your way inside, another one of the statues that was created. On the outside is now like a cosmetology clinic. On the outside of it, they use the image of the bust of the Statue of Liberty on their advertisement. So if you're eagle-eyed and you go in there, you could spot another one, a much smaller version, still pretty big. It's not it's more like the size of a 17-year-old child, not just a little tiny one. There's always a lot of people talking about how many statues of liberty there are in Paris. There's even a small one on the Caesar statue that's near in the 7th, near the Poilin Bakery. That's a very notable address to go visit. we're walking down this lovely little island. But then, so in June 1889, when this version was finally created that we see on the island, the original version finally got to New York and was placed in October of 1886. It arrived 10 years later than they wanted it to get there, but it did finally arrive. And it was placed the base. Oh, how nice! Have the best day. The base of the structure that it's placed on, that's in New York, was created. That part had to be created and paid for by the United States. That's not the base that Bartoli had intended for it. He wanted to actually be standing on what looked like the stern of a boat. If you go to the Musée des Arts et Métiers in Paris, where inside they have the original design, and the original smaller, created from the mold of the original, is standing on a boat, and you can actually walk in underneath it, and you can see it was what he intended it to be. Outside, there used to be another version of the statue, but that's recently left and come on a little tour to the US. I believe it's in New York right now, looking over towards her much bigger sister. And then it's going to go to Washington, D.C., to the embassy of France. And then she's supposed to be returning back. So she's going on a little tour. But this one that we see there, it was placed in June of 1889. It was part of the World's Fair that was also the same year that the Eiffel Tower was unveiled. So it was a big deal at the time. You had these two different big statues that were placed there. It was actually with her back to the US. She was actually looking towards Elysee Palace and towards into Paris. And Bartoli was not happy about that. He wanted it originally from the beginning, when it was placed there, to be facing actually towards New York. So he was not very happy. It stayed that way until 1937, when she was turned around and she was facing towards New York like she is now. We're on this little island. If you haven't been out here, it's a really fun little place to see. There's, it's very narrow. It's partially man-made. It's the Ile de Cygne, which is the Isle of Swans. The original Isle of Swans was actually much farther down. It was closer to the other side of the Eiffel Tower. It was placed in there, and it was in the 1600s. Where it was just kind of a little tiny island that kind of stuck out in the sun. It was got the name because it was where Louis XIV in 1676 had 40 different swans dumped there. I mean, not dumped, they need to be in the water, but they were taken there and they were placed on this little island. They were a gift from Denmark that he had brought over, and they were laying eggs there. And so the eggs were for the residents to go, they could collect them and eat them. But they had 40 swans. And so they were laying so many eggs so quickly that people couldn't keep up with them. And then people actually wanted to, we could say, dispose of the swans, kill the swans, basically, because they were tired of them coming up onto the banks and laying these eggs everywhere, and they couldn't keep up with them. So they actually had to put a notice out that, if you hurt the swans or you tried to kill the swans, you yourself would be killed. So later on, when they were building the bridge that we had gone over, when you first go down to the Statue of Liberty, when they were building that, it was just at that time, it was going to be just for foot passage. They ended up having this small dike in the middle of the water. And then as they were building it, they made it bigger and bigger and bigger. And that is what we see today. At one point, it was 3 times as wide as this was, because it was created for the World's Fair. It actually was it was widened, and it was lengthened at that period of time, and they used it for the display of the colonies. And so the whole entire thing was just covered with these temporary buildings that were, of course, lost that they took down shortly after the World's Fair and destroyed. But you actually found a drawing of what it looked like at the time, and it just was completely covered with buildings. Again, it was about 3 times as wide as it is now. Because at that time the World's Fair, was down here. You had all the temporary buildings at the Trocadero. Of course, we had the Eiffel Tower there that was supposed to also just be temporary. But the Grinnell Bridge is the first one you go past that would link over the area over there was known as the Grinnell. And then it linked over to, of course, to the right bank. So there's not much, notable, and, there's no notable buildings or anything that is here, but underneath, right where we started at the Statue of Liberty, just underneath there, they have, it was the first time I had seen these in Paris. They have like a different people go down there, work out, and they even have like it's what looks like an exercise bike, but it's just kind of like completely stuck there. It's not really, it's just basically bars and pedals. And so there's like a little rock wall, and there's some other things where people could actually go there and work out. There's another bridge that we passed that went over us as well. That was basically only for train traffic that was built at the time. It's now houses, it's a metro line. But when they were building these, they just kept expanding and lengthening this little island as it went. It's a great place to come visit and just walk. You could tell that they don't, it's not, the landscape is not exactly in the greatest of shape, but it kind of makes it kind of nice. And this, I'm so glad that all of the, hopefully we could see when we get up there, that all of the, they had a bunch of scaffolding and everything closing this off. So if you want to hold right there, Kate, this is, of course, this is another one of the most beautiful bridges in Paris that everybody knows. It's been captured in probably more movies than most bridges in Paris. This is the Pont Bir Hakim, and this was, it's named that, it got its name because it was named for the Battle of the Bir Hakim in the Libyan desert of World War II that lasted from May 27th, 1942 to June 11th, 1942. It was when the Free French Brigade defeated the Germans and the Italians and allowed the British to withdraw. So maybe that's what they'll call the World Cup today. It could be another one of those because it's England against Italy. Go England. So they created this bridge. It's this beautiful bridge. It was rebuilt. It was originally in 1878. There was a bridge here. It was a footbridge that linked Passy, where you could see, it says up here, the Viaduct du Passy. It was rebuilt in 1903 to 1905 by Louis Billet, who was a decorator for the city of Paris, and architect Jean-Camille Fournier. The bridge allowed, when they built it, allowed to have foot, train, and car traffic, which you still have today, pass over the Seine. So you still have that today. Here we have the foot and the cars down below. And then up above, the train still goes. And that's kind of one of the coolest metros to take because you actually get to see this amazing view of the Eiffel Tower over here on the other side. Look it's getting busier, guys. There's more people. Today, Kate said traffic was crazy when she texted me this morning. There's always a photo shoot going on here too. Get off of the statue. I don't think you are supposed to be up there. I will actually have been known to tell people to not touch things and to get off of statues, especially in the Louvre. I'll walk up and say, no, do not touch. So we are, of course, here at the end of the bridge. Or the end of the little island. And here at the very end of it, usually most people don't realize who this is. It's not really named for her. And there's a reason for that. But here we have on the end, this amazing sculpture and statue of course, Our Lady Jeanne d'Arc, Miss Joan of Arc. Is this like a Taekwondo or a karate little thing going on here. So here she is at the end of the bridge. This was created by a Danish artist, and it was said that they were going to give it to Paris. And when they unveiled what the structure was going to look at, is that person writing on it, Kate? Give me that guy. I'm gonna go yell at him. I can't believe he's just writing on the statue. Okay, I'll calm down. So did you say no? So when they unveiled it, people were a little shocked because Joan of Arc is usually depicted, on a horse, like we saw the weekend before last in front of Saint Augustin. She is depicted on a horse, but she's usually standing tall and holding her flag and getting ready to charge off. Well, this one, they thought it looked a little bit more like she was going off to war. It looked a little bit more aggressive than Joan of Arc is usually seen. And so some people are kind of freaking out. So it was supposed to be named Joan of Arc. And then they decided to change it. So it was renamed to the French Resistance, because then everybody was a little happier about that. Because they just didn't want Joan of Arc looking, which is this, I think it's actually makes her a little bit more of a badass this way, that she was a pretty amazing young teenage girl in what she did. So they ended up, then they all kind of agreed. It was installed in 1958. She's wearing a chainmail, outfit, and then around her head you see that kind of funny halo that kind of is going from the front to the back instead of on the side, and that's called a nimbus. And it usually, you see that a lot in art, especially the Italian art of the saints, and it's like a halo around their head, but usually you see them with the saints and it's all gold. So the fact that it's here kind of sideways, that kind of tells you that the statue is meant to be taken in from the side. But she's pretty amazing when you look at it from the back and you look at towards the Statue of Liberty, or the Statue of Liberty, the Eiffel Tower. I still can't get over that person was writing on it. We can't have nice things. We just can't have nice things. So this bridge, of course, you have on either side of it. And then if we could kind of, I don't know, Kate, if you could go back over to the water side and look towards either side of the bridge, because there's statues, there's sculptures on the pillars that hold up the bridge in the water. I'm not sure if you could see that. But on either side here, you also have the bas-reliefs that are painted on the, or sculpted on the side. There's commerce and electricity, and they also have all these the different symbols. Mercury, you always see with the caduceus, I think is how we say it, but it's holding, and it's supposed to be, you see it, a lot of people get confused that it is the medical symbol. You see it there in the center. I'm not sure if we could see the pillars in the water from up here. Because those are really, oh, you kind of can down there. They're mirror images of each other on either side. So some of the bridges actually have it where, they're all different. But this one is, there's the blacksmith that has the rivet, there have the riveters with the seal of France, where it says the big RF on it. And then the other side is all about the water life and the shipbuilders and the boats. So I think when I get there, I'm gonna try to do a walk where we'll have to break it up because it'd be very long, is to go along the Seine, or maybe do it on one of the bateaux mouches, and go and see, and we could see all of these different amazing statues and sculptures that are underneath the bridges. I love to do the bateau mouche, even though it's so touristy, but I do love to do it, especially if it's on a hot day and you get on there and you have all that wind on you. Oh, it's wonderful. But then you could go and see underneath all of the bridges. But in the center of the Bir Hakeim is, of course, um, uh, I know, Karen, we're gonna go back and get that guy. So here in the very center of it, you have all these different columns, these little pillars that are holding the upper part up. They originally each had their own design as sculptures on each one of them, but when they redid the bridge, they were actually taken out. And you have seen these many times. Of course, they were in the National Treasure, where they tried to make it look like this was the bridge that was closest to the Eiffel Tower, because they had that little drone they were flying up and trying to get a look at close up. So they made it look like this bridge was right next to the Eiffel Tower. They also used that bridge in The Last Tango in Paris, which is a very interesting movie. It's been used quite a few times. Of course, Inception, they used that bridge where she was standing and then the whole thing folded in on top of itself. So it's been used a lot in movies. And now we're over on the left bank. I know, I still can't believe that guy was actually just had the nerve to draw on that, but that's okay. I'll get over it. So now we are up on this upper side, and we are on the left bank, and this is the site of something that happened 80 years ago this week on the 16th of July, 1941. Is that some lavender? Look at how I have one huge bush of lavender, and the other day I had the window open, and the wind, there was a little breeze, and it was blowing the smell of the lavender into my window. It was absolutely heavenly. So this up here is the Square de la Place des Matiere and Juif de Velodrome Hiver. It's a very loud one, long one. So this area up here, this garden, marks kind of the spot, and we're going to walk across to the other side where that horrific episode happened in 1941. There's a sculpture that's up here. When we go down, we'll see, by a Polish artist. I think it's down there at the end. But this whole area, in 1941, when it was actually French police, French officers were tasked by the Germans to round up the Jewish people in Paris. And so this was after another time that they ended up actually, it was called the green tickets. And they were actually sent these green tickets to the homes of Jews. And they actually, if they answered them and they ended up going to the police station, they were basically captured and sent off to basically their death. So this was the second episode that they ended up just basically rounding them up. They went out at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I started knocking on the doors and capturing these people, telling them they could bring a sweater and a pair of shoes, and they had to leave, and told a lot of them that they would be back, which of course we know that they weren't. This statue that's here is the memorial to the victims of the winter, the velodrome. The velodrome d'hiver is the winter velodrome, which is what was here. So this statue that has some women and some children, and you see them with their suitcase. It's just it's just horrible. I mean, the statue is beautiful, but this was created by a name named Walter Spitzer. It was placed here in 1994, July 17th, which is the 16th, 17th are the anniversaries. But Walter was born in Poland in 1927. In 1943, at 16 years old, he was deported with his family to the Gros Rosin concentration camp in Poland. He was then shipped off to the labor camp in Auschwitz. He was tattooed with number 78489, and he was separated from his mother, who he ended up finding out because she tried to escape. She was captured and she was killed. In January 1945, he was released later, and was able to serve as an interpreter for the U.S. Army before he immigrated to France. He attended the École des Beaux-Arts, and from then on, he dedicated the rest of his life to creating sculptures in remembrance of what had happened to the Jews during World War II. So he created this one. He actually, as there's a couple statues that he created that are also in the United States. But he dedicated his whole life to creating these amazing pieces. On April 13th of this year, sadly, at 93 years old, he died of coronavirus. So another horrible thing about this last year. The base is curved because it's like the velodrome. So the velodrome that was here was created by a gentleman that he had it built that he owned. He was an editor for a newspaper in France. And then he also is the man that created the Tour de France. So they had created the Tour de France. Henri Dessonnet, who is the editor of L'Auto, he was the one who decided they should have the Tour de France to help publicize their newspaper. And today, if you're watching the tour, they are going over the highest peak. It's at 8,000 feet, and it is actually called the Souvenir Henri Dessonnier, which is named after him, of course. But they built this velodrome in 1900 for the World's Fair, and they would have cycling races in there. They'd have boxing, roller skating, which I was very excited about, and circuses. And in 1924, the Summer Olympics even held some of their events here. Hemingway would go there to watch boxing, and he would take Sylvia Beach there as well to go watch boxing matches where he was teaching her all about boxing. But the horrible event that happened was on March 14th, 1941 is when they did the green tickets. And then July 16th, when they started rounding up everybody, they brought them here. The roof of it was glass. They painted it over. They painted it black. There was only 5 restrooms that were available. 10. There were 10, but 5 of them had windows, so they were all nailed shut. And so it was horrible conditions. There was 13,000 people that were brought there. 5,800 of them were women. 4,000 of them were children. They were all brought to this location. They spent a few days there before they were taken off. And we all know what happened now. Next after that, the Germans demanded that right when the war started, they demanded that this Val d'Hiver be handed over to them and given the keys. And they did that not knowing what it was going to be for. And so the French, actually, the officers complied, and they were the ones that were involved with picking all of these families up and bringing them there. It was later in 1995, on July 16th, that Jacques Chirac, in a speech that he made here that day, ended up actually taking some ownership that the France had acknowledged that their part in this. In 2017, President Macron actually spoke a little bit stronger, saying that basically this would never have happened if it wasn't for the French. Because it was the French officers that did it. So you have all of the names of the people. It's so many of them were children. And you see a lot of these plaques in the different parks, especially in the Marais, in different parks and on schools. A lot of the schools, especially in the Marais, will actually have signs in the entrance of the schools of the names of the children that were taken and never seen again. It's pretty horrific, but this is where the velodrome sat. It sat over here in this area. And they have this little garden here that's so lovely. Are those look like they're permanent ones? I'm sure that there are people that still come here. We're gonna in a couple weeks we're gonna go to around where actually that Caesar statue is, and where the Hotel Lutis, and the Hotel Lutis was widely used at that period of time. The Germans took that over as one of their many headquarters, and that is where Jewish families would go every single day to go there and try to find out what had happened to their family members that disappeared in the middle of the night. Um, it was just a horrific period. When I was in the hospital, one of my nurses was telling me that her grandmother actually was Jewish and lived through the war in Paris. At the time, I would have loved to have heard more of the story, but she didn't. That's basically all she knew. It was, yeah, I would have loved to have actually heard about that from their point of view. It would have been quite interesting. But, we all know what happened at that horrible time. And then they started a lot of the stuff they would tell them that they could bring, they bring their glasses and their other things like that. And then basically everything was taken from them. Then they would, if you left your home, and this went for even French people, if you left your home in Paris and in France, then they felt that was you just abandoning your things. So it was, in their eyes, it was all free for the taking. And then they would go and just basically take every single thing out of the home, linens, just everything off the walls. And so you see some of these old black and white pictures of, just, boxes and boxes filled with glasses and, Jewish scrolls and everything. It's just horrible. And they actually would take it to quite a few different places in Paris. We had walked by one of the buildings that was over in the 16th on one of the tours, and that was one of the spots. They would actually have Jewish women that they basically were, in prison in German, jail here in France. They would take them over there each day to go and sort through these things. But luckily, some of these things, especially the Jewish regalia, some of it was saved, and under our wonderful Rose Valland, some of that stuff was actually able to be returned. And if you've seen the documentary, The Rape of Europa, which is fantastic, it's amazingly well done. It's from, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago or so. They actually have a gentleman that was working on making it the mission of his life to try to return some of these things. A lot of them would be, made of silver and be carved with a name of somebody in the family, and passed down generations. And he was doing all he could to actually get these things and return them back to the descendants of these Jewish families that were killed during World War II. It's an amazing documentary. It's also all about the Monuments Men as well. And there's stuff about Rose Valland and just that period of time in history that is so horrible. But this is, I have to walk up to this place. I haven't actually walked up here in person. But this is actually not very far from where there is a Avenue de Ernest Hemingway. So I have to go do a little walk up here and see all of this. But it is very sad and touching. But it is the 80th anniversary, which is crazy to think of it as 80 years ago. Has anybody been down in this little area? You have these beautiful, Kate, we could walk back out down that street we came in and walk back towards the river. These buildings over here are really gorgeous buildings. Of course, Haussmannian buildings. They were built later because the velodrome actually went through the war. It was still used for a short period of time, but there was a fire in it, and then it ended up actually having to be destroyed. I really like those fences are really cool. It ended up having to be destroyed. So all of the buildings that are around here on these little streets are definitely much later than, when you see most of the buildings in Paris, I should say. Anytime you see anything that's, built in the 19th century, that's when you think it's like, this is brand new in Paris. This is new stuff. But this little street, this building right here to your left, Kate, where this door is, if you back out into the street without hopefully getting, it's a pretty quiet day. This is a gorgeous, I love this door. And it used to be this whole street, and there was a countess that owned this house, this whole building, and lived. But it's gorgeous, isn't it? I love the oval, the beef eye, they call them. So pretty. But then you have those very modern buildings on the other side, which is this little quiet street, the Rue Nacard. And then we're on, we're so close to the Eiffel Tower. We could kind of just walk along there a little bit. This over here, down here, where there's also the Australian Embassy. We got some blue sky coming in up there. But yeah, the velodrome before the 1940s, it would have different cycling races. At the time, the Tour de France for quite a few years actually finished in there. So they would come in there and do a bunch of laps inside the velodrome, and that would be the end of the Tour de France. Of course, now it finishes on the Champs-Élysées. It's the only part of the race, the Champs-Élysées section, that is always the same now. The way they come into Paris is different. Lately, though, they've been actually coming in. The last few years, they've been coming in at the top of, coming in on the other side of the Jardin de Luxembourg, going down that way, going down the Boulevard Saint-Michel, and then going across the bridge. And it looks like, again, for the third year in a row, they're going to go through the courtyard of the Louvre. So they come in through the backside, and then they go through the Cour Carrée and the Cour Napoleon and go around. Oh, hi there. They go around the pyramid, and then they come back out, and then they do the circuits that go all the way around from the top of the Arc de Triomphe all the way down. They did that for a big anniversary years ago. They added in, because it used to stop prior to the Arc de Triomphe, and then they'd flip around doing the circuits. And a few years ago, it was a big anniversary, and so they went all the way around the top to the Arc de Triomphe and around. And so now they still do that. And it's a bit of a hill. If you've walked it from the bottom of the Champs-Élysées to the top, it does have a gradual incline the entire way. So that's always fun to see them go across it. On my very first visit to France, I arrived on a Sunday. It was the first Sunday of the month, which is when they close the Champs-Élysées to car traffic, so you could walk. And that was the first thing I had to do, is we had to walk up the Champs-Élysées on the cobblestones, just like they did in the Tour de France. So that's always my favorite. And there's always this amazing shot that they get on a camera from behind the golden Joan of Arc, looking at them coming out of that tunnel that's underneath the Tuileries, and they come up around that corner, and then they do all of the laps. So that is next Sunday. And so they start later on that final Sunday. So hopefully once they get to that part, it'll be after our walk, because I can't miss it. But that is the best part. And then hopefully, if you've been watching Mark Cavendish, he is going to, hopefully he will get his winning. He's had 34 stages of the Tour de France that he has won, which matches that of the great cannibal. They called him Eddie Merckx. He was the Belgian cyclist. He's still alive. He had 34, and Mark Cavendish tied his record the other day. And so hopefully he gets that. If you don't watch the Tour de France, even if you don't know anything about cycling, which there's not a whole lot to know, but you should definitely watch it because the aerial views for 5 or 6 hours every morning of France is amazing. So here you could kind of see a little bit better that pillar on the left. You can see in the middle of it, that's actually the seal with the big RF for France in there. And they are on both sides of the bridge, on the upstream and the downstream, and then both sides of the little tip of the island. They're all kind of, there's just the two different ones. And you can see those guys right there. I was trying to think if we would go all the way around, but that would have taken too long. But yeah, you could walk along this whole area and you could walk down below. It starts to, this is where you start to get into more people as you go. The closer we get to the Eiffel Tower. There is a Statue of Liberty also on one of those boats down there. I don't know, would you guys want to live on one of the, I mean, it'd be pretty amazing views to live on one of those. I'm always curious when you see people that live there on those boats, especially over like by the Pont des Arts. There's that one, and sometimes I walk by and they're just sitting up on top having apéro with some friends, and they're just, you know, it's like, oh my God, I can't even imagine. Susan, I will be back in Paris in 37 days to be specific. I can't wait. So I will be back, and I will be back until the end of October. So I am so excited. I'm getting so excited. I have a friend of mine that's actually leaving today. And then Karen, I think Karen's in here. She is leaving on Wednesday. She gets to go over there. So it's really exciting. I think there's more and more Americans coming in now. Kate said this morning when the traffic was kind of crazy, the pre-pandemic traffic, I think, is back everywhere for everyone, including all of us. But it is getting busier. So I hope everybody is making their plans, whether it's this year or next year. I know Dawn and Carol are next year on getting back. It's a great time to get back there. Hopefully, I don't think the pre-pandemic amount of travelers are probably going to be there until next spring. So if you go now, you could probably enjoy it with a little bit more space. You still need to have tickets. I would still get tickets for everything, especially the Carnavalet. And I know Ellen was getting her tickets for that, but she was having some problems with the website. So just keep kind of trying, but I would get multiple tickets, multiple different days, at least 2 different days for the Carnavalet, because they keep having strikes. I think they've had 3 or 4 strikes now in the last month and a half that it's been open, including the very first day. But on Thursday, the 22nd, I'm going to do another little free live chat. And so talking about planning for Paris and anything that has changed or what you need to think of, and then I could answer any of your questions. I am constantly keeping an eye on all of the new things happening in Paris, all the new exhibits, any of the new events. I'm super excited. Then on September 18th, finally, they will unveil the Christos. He is wrapping of the Arc de Triomphe. Sadly, he died last year. But Christo and his wife is Jean-Claude. They would go and wrap these different things. They did those gates where it was that structure, I think in Central Park, where it had all of the fabric. They wrapped the Pont Neuf quite a long time ago. And he always wanted to wrap the Arc de Triomphe. It was pushed off initially because when they were going to have it put in place, it was in spring of, I think 2020 was the plan. They had to push it off because it was the migrating pattern of this certain bird that would a lot of times nest on the top of Arc de Triomphe. So they moved it to the fall of 2020, and then we all know what happened. So now it is going to go from September 18th till October 3rd. So if you're even on the edge of thinking about going, but I will make sure to make sure that we do a video from there and show you. It's going to be really, really cool. There's already some cool drawings and stuff that Christo actually did of his plan of what it's going to look like. So it's going to be really exciting. And there's also through the end of August, they're going to do at Les Invalides, they do this really cool light show where they project images up onto Les Invalides. So I am really excited that that's still going to be going when I get there. So I'll check that out and share it with all of you. And the Paris Plage. There's a whole big thing being set up at the Trocadero for that. That's all kind of geared to promoting the Olympics that are just a few short years away in Paris in 2024. So they're setting up a bunch of, they just call it sport, basketball courts and all sorts of stuff that's going to be over the Trocadero. I can't tell if that's the new paint job, I think, on the bottom. They're painting it this kind of golden color. A lot of people think it's because it's in conjunction with the Olympics. They are repainting it. They repaint it, I believe it's like every 9 years. And this is actually the original intended color that Gustave Eiffel had for it. And I did this really cool tour. I think I mentioned when we walked around here before that you go behind the scenes and you go underneath into like out into the Champ de Mars. You go underneath. They take you into basically where it was like the controls of the radio towers, and they used this space during World War II as well. And you could go in and underneath there, and they had painted on the side all the different colors all the different layers and colors of paint. At one point, it was kind of a reddish color, which was, I think that's the color they should go back to. But there was a kind of a golden color. I think, if it was actually painted like shiny gold, that would be pretty cool too. But it will take quite a few years. They have to take the paint off first and get rid of the rust. And then they could start doing the painting. But it's pretty amazing. That's a lot of people back. This is a lot more people than when we walked here back. I think it was in February. Kate, I think that's when we came here. It was quite a long time ago, it seems.
Yeah, I remember it was icy rain.
Yes, that's right.
Like not even snowing. It was like hail and sleet, and now it's boiling hot.
Now it's boiling hot, and lots more people.
Yeah. Lots more people.
Yeah. That first layer is, if you look at the old pictures of when we did the walk, I think at the end I showed you some pictures. That first layer where, first level where people are, they used to have this gorgeous, it was all like, like lacy, and it's kind of like what's underneath it. It was this really beautiful part that wrapped around the Eiffel Tower. And once later on, when they did a reconstruction, they took all of that off to kind of ease some of the weight on the Eiffel Tower. But it's so sad because it was so pretty. It was just this very lacy, little tiny, it went all the way around it. It was kind of like the bottom of the arch there at the top, where it kind of goes from leg to leg. That's my favorite part, because it's this really pretty lacy part. There's just a lot of people around here. Oh, and then you have €1. So you go down here and this is where you could get on the Bateau Mouche. If you want to do those, you could also do the Bateau Mouche that takes off at the end of the Ile de la Cité. There's also the Bateau Bus, I think they called it, that you could buy a ticket and then it goes along the river and it stops and goes in and out. I know my friend Roxanne, they did that, and I jumped on it one time with them. But it's kind of cool. It's kind of like taking the bus. You could buy a 1 day or 2 day ticket, and then you could kind of hop on and off of it going down the river. But the Bateau Mouche, some people, think, oh, so touristy, I would never do it. It's pretty cool though. It's pretty cool, especially to sit on top, and you could go underneath all the bridges. You get a view of Paris that you don't normally get to see. There's also the they opened in the last couple years a very fancy Alain Ducasse dinner and lunch that you could have, and it's very expensive. I have a couple clients that I'm doing some trip planning for that are doing it. There's different levels. It goes anywhere from 190 euros to 550, and that's basically the courses that you get. So you get like 3 courses or 2 courses for a 190 euros going up to 550, but you get this amazing dinner of Alain Ducasse. Oh, it's more if you want wine. And then you get to go and see all of these monuments at night lit up for dinner or for lunch. I might just have to try to do that for lunch sometime. It might be kind of cool to see it. And the food would be amazing. So some of them that serve food, I've heard that the food isn't so great, but a lot of them, and they leave all the time. So if you go down there, I think there's like, I think there's a tour maybe every 20 or 30 minutes. And so you could just go down there, but it is a great thing to do on a hot day. I was there one time and it was like 95 degrees. So I thought, oh, this would be a great deal. And it was a great deal one way, because one direction you had the wind. And then when it turned around and went the other direction, it wasn't, there was no wind and it was really hot. What's that? Oh,
I think it's, oh,
oh, there you are.
hello.
Yeah, there we're here. What's it say?
I think it's the Algerian, Moroccan, and Tunisian memorial. It says here.
Oh, that's cool. I've seen these. Yeah,
I guess the Algerian.
That must be pretty new, since it has. I
think it is brand new.
Yeah,
it looks like it's just been set in. It doesn't have a date.
Yeah, and if it has those flowers there, they probably have just installed it.
Yeah, I think so. It says
the anniversary.
Obviously, it says 1954 to 1962 on the actual thing, but I don't know what year the actual monument. It must be brand new, I think.
I mean, it must be pretty new when it's very high tech.
Well, yeah. So,
but that's cool, and it's in the French flag colors.
Yeah, let me see if I can find a date on the.
Look, guys, we're exploring live.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't have a date when it was actually.
We'll look into that.
I can see. Yeah.
We'll look into that. Cheryl said she did a Bateau Parisien. It was outstanding. Great food and wine. Oh, that's good. It's good to know. Yeah, I always try to get up to the very front of the boat so I could see everything. But they do kind of, I'd like them to go under the bridges a little bit slower so I can really take it in. I need to get one of those. I think we might have seen one before. There's that gorgeous boat it's small, and I think Ina Garden did something on her TV show when she was there. It's only for like a couple people, but Kate, we should look into that. See how much that costs, because you could go on there, just absolutely. A couple people. It's that gorgeous wooden boat that only fits like 3 or 4 people and takes you around Paris. I think that would be pretty amazing.
Oh, I have to get my mum over for that.
Yeah.
she's commenting yes.
Yes.
At me. Yeah.
We definitely need to do that. It'd be pretty cool. So we will, this is another bridge coming up here. It's another just pedestrian bridge, but we'll go ahead and leave everybody here. And so you could, turn into Wimbledon or the tour or, whatever you do on a Sunday. And next week we have a very special day, because next week we are actually leaving Paris because Kate is going down to Provence. It's a surprise for her roommate, so nobody tell her. But we're going down to Provence, and Kate's taking us with her. So we're going to go down to this little town, Saint-Chamond, I think it's what it is. It's called.
Oui.
And she's going to take us down there. It's down south. It's near the Mediterranean. It looks absolutely wonderful. So Kate's going to take us with her. And we're going to explore around there. There's a really cool old remains of a of a bridge that actually was built under Emperor August in like 32 BC, and it's still there. So that's really cool. So we're excited to see that. So that'll be next week. And then we have a couple other fun ones on August 1st. We're going to go back to Saint-Germain, and we're going to go, we went very early in these walking tours to Saint-Sulpice, but we're going to go back again. I was asked by a friend of a friend, this gentleman named Rocky. He ended up right when I started to get very sick. He unexpectedly sort of passed away. He found out a few short days before that he had cancer, and then he passed away right as I started to get sick. He was an amazing and lovely guy. I met him just through Instagram, and then he was involved with interior design and took students to France. He was very beloved by a lot of people, and they reached out to me because his birthday is the end of July, and he loves Saint-Sulpice, and asked me if I could do the tour. We could go check that out. So we're going to go inside Saint-Sulpice. We'll spend a little bit more time there than I think last time. We just briefly walked in and walk around Saint-Sulpice. So I really, I hope you could join us every weekend. And I'll try to get that through that one without crying, because I could just about cry just even talking about it. So he was a really, really special guy. So I hope you could join us then and every weekend, and next weekend when we leave and we go to Provence. So we'll have to I'll have rosé for that at 8 o'clock in the morning. So thank you everybody for joining us today. And I hope you have a wonderful Sunday and a wonderful week. And it's 14 Juillet. It's Bastille Day on Wednesday. So I hope that everybody is having champagne as soon as you wake up in the morning. Everybody wear blue, white, and red. Not red, white, and blue, but blue, white, and red that day. I get more excited about that day than I do 4th of July, as one would assume, bien sûr. So thank you everybody so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Hi, Peter. Thank you so much. And thank you, Peter, for sending all those wonderful things. We're going to get up to the museum when I'm there. We'll do a video from your grandfather's museum. So thank you guys all so much for joining us, and I will see you soon and this week. Merci, Kate.
Merci. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Claudine.
Thank you.